Hello and welcome to this series called Fix My File. Today we're going to have a look at Excel, and within Excel we're going to look at formatting. On the screen you can see a fairly broken Excel document. Now this is quite a small example, but it will give me the opportunity to illustrate some information to you. You would be amazed how many times I see documents like this in the real world in my consultancy business. So this is not really an over-exaggeration. This is actually something that is really, really commonplace in lots of people's work life. And potentially what's happened here is somebody's created a document for themselves. And so it's been a little bit rushed. They haven't had to worry too much about the presentation. And obviously these random numbers at the bottom, they know what that means. The problem with these sorts of things is when you then come to share this document, it's not really ready for sharing. Or if you're away on annual leave and somebody needs to jump into the document to get some answers, they're left with more questions. And of course, in 6 months' time, if you come back into this document, you quite possibly won't understand it either. So let's have a look at some really simple ways that we can actually improve this and fix it from being rather sad to rather fantastic. Now, what I've got over here in column M is some pointers to get us in the right direction. So if we just move that over, we'll be able to read those on the screen. So the first thing we're going to have a look at here is some columns do not have headers. Okay. Now, why is this a problem? Well, because it's really difficult to sort and filter information if everything doesn't have headers, and also you can't create pivot tables. Now, for most spreadsheets that are going to involve analysis, you will be using pivot tables and the fabulous pivot charts. And one of the rules of pivot tables is there must be a header for every single column. So let's just go ahead and add them in now. This column here, which has got countries and cities and those sorts of things in it, these are actually states in the States. So we're going to put location. Now it might be that you need to stipulate more than that. You have to try and future-proof your document. Is this location where stock is held? Is this location of where the client is, most probably in this occasion? So I'm actually going to change that and put client location. Okay, so now it's really simple, and I'm just going to double click here so that we can read that. It's really obvious now what that's for. Client organization, salesperson, that's quite obvious. Now, if you didn't know this business, you would have no idea what this meant. Now, this is actual employees grade. Okay, so that's their job role. I think I've spelt that wrong. So let's redo that. Okay, and I'm going to stretch that a little bit. There we go. Contract status, that's quite clear. And then we've got budget and actuals, and we've got June and July up here. Now, if I wanted to create a pivot table, these have all got headers. However, these headers are the same, budget and budget, actuals and actuals. So a pivot table wouldn't work on those. Now, I appreciate we've got them written up here, but if I try and incorporate that within my pivot table, it will say these don't have headers. So again, we've got a bit of a conundrum here. What you can do very, very easily is just combine the two. Okay, and then you would do June 25. I'm going to keep the formatting the same. And then here we're going to have July 25. Now, I haven't done the formatting there because I need to have a dash. And the same for here. Now, what that does mean is that I can also delete this top row. I don't need it anymore. So I'm going to do that now. It's going to delete the blank row here, but that's absolutely fine. So let's get rid of that. Okay, so now all of these titles are meaningful. If I want to do sorting, filtering, if I want to create a pivot table, everything is going to work now. So that's fabulous. That's the first part ticked. Next, we've got these random scattered totals at the bottom. They're not labelled. If you look at them and you understand the formulas and you have a bit of a background to Excel, you'll be able to work out what it is they're telling you. But when they're just random scattered here, it's really easy that they get broken, that somebody copies and pastes over them, that they might get dragged in the wrong direction, that you might insert columns, and this number ends up being all the way over here. So if they're not important, delete them. If you use them for 5 minutes just to check your sums or totals were right, and then you've done your checks, delete them afterwards so that other people don't have to consider what they might be beneficial for, what they're trying to teach somebody. So the best way to do that, if you want to keep them, is to actually create them as part of your structured document. And it doesn't really matter where you do it. You can have a summary table at the bottom. That's no problem at all. So here, for example, is the sum. Okay, so we're going to have the word here that says total. And it's a header, so I'm going to make it bold. And I'm going to drag that all the way across, on the assumption that if I wanted it for one column, there's every chance I'm going to want it for the other columns as well. Now this one is average, so I'm going to put average in here. Again, I'm going to make that bold, and that's just working out the average of those columns. So I've added that in here. This one, what is this summing? Okay, so that's a total as well. So we have actually got that answer now in here. So it's a duplication, we can delete it. This is a total of, let's have a look if we click on it, these 4. Now that seems a bit meaningless. Why would you ever want to sum up budget, actuals? Now if it was budget total, that makes sense. If it was actuals total, that makes sense. But to add it all together, I think is probably somebody checking that they've managed to get everything that they need from their raw data document. So for me, it doesn't add any value. It's not a meaningful statistic. I'm going to delete it. So that's it gone. Now this looks much neater. It's tidier. If someone wants to insert rows, they're going to understand that this is information and it needs to remain in the document. So they're not going to paste over it and things like that. Next, let's have a look at some columns have abbreviated words. Okay, so why is this important? Well, you can't sort or filter properly, and if you're doing formulas, they won't work. So let's have a look at an example for this. So what I mean by this is that you can have in here, you can see that we've got closed and closed. Okay. We've got pending without the vowels, and we've got pending. So if I then tried to do a sum if or a count if on the word pending, it's not going to capture them because they're spelled incorrectly. If I wanted to, for example, do some sorting or some filtering on here, and I have a look, I can see that I've got active, closed, open, pending spelled differently. So we've got lots of different variations here that aren't going to work. And so this part is really about cleaning your data first. And it's super, super important. So here I would want to overwrite any of these differences that we've got and make sure that we are ending up with a far more standardized list of what the options in this can be. Now, if this document is being filled in by somebody else, it's very helpful. What you actually might want to do is have drop-down boxes here. So they tick on the drop-down box and they just select the options that you want to give them, which in this case might be active, pending, closed. Now, what we've also got is open. Would something be open and active? Maybe they're different statuses. Maybe it's open first and then it moves to active. But if not, I would also want to overwrite that. People just aren't using the language that I want them to use. The foolproof way of dealing with that is to do a drop-down box. Okay, so now we've tidied some of these up. We need to have a look at the fact the financial data is not formatted properly. So let's have a look here. What we can see is that this is all financial information. We're talking about budgets and actuals. But you can see here some are this way aligned. Some are really over close to the edge. Some have pounds and pence or dollars and cents, and some don't. They're just rounded numbers. So what we've got in effect is no uniformity here, and it should always be uniform. People really question how accurate your data is if it's not tidy and presentable. So let's go in and have a look. And of course, we don't know at this point what currency it is. Now, I'm going to assume it's dollars because we're talking about American locations here. So what I will always do for information which is financial, I will put it into the accounting format. Okay, so some of the numbers, some of the different items, they might have come in as text, they might be numbers, some might be currency. It doesn't really matter what you pick out of numbers and currency, but you do want them to always be the same. And that's a personal preference, isn't it? Now, we've got this row here, which has not formatted as a currency. And that's actually something we're going to talk about in a moment. So I'll skip over that for now, but we can see that these other rows are formatted much more nicely, and of course we've included those as well because they are also value amounts. One thing that you see all the time is different fonts, text sizes, and sometimes colours being used. It does make it makes the information difficult to read, and sometimes you don't know whether someone is trying to draw emphasis to something on purpose. So for example, this number is bigger. Okay, this is an Aptus Narrow 10, and the rest of it is a Calibre 9. Now, this normally happens when someone's copying and pasting information from a different file. And in that file, they were using Aptos, and in this file, we're using Calibre. So depending on how they import it, everything comes through with different sizes, numbers. But of course, if you want your document to look professional, it needs to all be the same. And you might have a favourite font that you use, you might within your business. You might have a corporate font that you have to stick to. That's fine. It doesn't matter what it is, but you do just need to make sure that it's all the same. So I'm going to highlight this. I could highlight the whole tab, but I also want to do the sizes as well. So if I highlight the whole tab and I say the whole tab should be, let's just pick Arial. It's fine. It doesn't matter on this occasion. But I've got different sizes here, and I might have different sizes for my headers. I might have different font sizes for this, which is fine. I want to draw attention to those areas. So what I will do now is I'll pick the bulk of this and I'll say I want you all to be a 9. So now that's reformatted it all to the right size. Now the fact that these are a bit bigger, I don't mind that. So these are actually an 11, which is fine. Okay, so that's tidied that up and just made it look a little bit more uniform. So here we've got the fact that we've got merged cells and rows. Now that's what's gone wrong here. This is not 2 rows. Somebody has squashed 2 rows of information into 1 row. So the problem with that is it is unclear. It can become hard to read. If you're trying to do drop down boxes, filtering, sorting, if you're doing pivot tables, this will throw everything into disarray. So we do need to organise this first. Do that part of your cleanse before you then come on to do your analysis. Now, if we look here, it's coming up as close active. Because as far as Excel is concerned, even though we've put them on different rows, it is still 1 row. And it thinks these numbers are all together. It doesn't understand that we've actually got 2 separate lines here. So there's a few different ways you can go about this. The easiest way, honestly, is just to copy and paste the information so that you've got a duplicate. So I've copied it. I'm going to insert my copied cells. So now I've got 2. They're exactly the same. Clearly, I don't need 2 of that, so I'll get rid of that to start with. And now all I need to do is separate the information. So we want to have, what I'm going to do is stretch my formula line here so I can see both rows. And this top one is just going to be CarMax. Now, once I've deleted it, I must make sure I delete back to just the top row because my cursor is still here on the second row, so it looks like there's a space. And I can now just really quickly, it only takes a matter of seconds to do this, I can clear up this top row. That should say closed. Now, if you've got to do this or 1 or 2 lines, it's not a problem. And honestly, it will be quicker to do it manually. But if you had a huge data set to do where you need to do this would become a problem. So we would use a slightly more automatic function to split these. But I'm not going to go through that today because that's a little bit more than we were looking to do. Now, you can see when I've changed these and I've made it just to one number, it's pulling the information through as accounting. Now, why are they not aligned? This cell has got wrap text. This cell does not have wrap text. So that's what's making the difference. I'm going to finish tidying up this other row and then I'm going to get rid of the wrap text. So let's just quickly do what we did last time, but this time obviously I'm deleting the top row and I'm keeping the bottom row so that they've actually got 2 sets of information. Sometimes people think this is helpful when they do this. I do get spreadsheets that look like this on occasion with numbers. Not helpful at all. Okay, so now we've solved that wrapping problem. Have we got any other rows that we think, and you can tell down here if I shrink this, you can tell down here, are there any more that are bigger? No. So we should now be able to format these and say, do not wrap my text. So now they're more aligned. That's great. And of course, because I've picked currency, they're all 2 decimal places. We've already checked that they're the same font and the same size. So that's great. What we've got down here is Illinois has been wrapped. Now, this has not been merged. It's just this name. And I get it. All 3 of these are in Illinois. But it doesn't mean that for future sorting formulas so and so are going to work. So for this occasion, I'm going to unmerge it. Oh, and I'm simply going to paste it. This is what happens when you rush. And I'm going to paste it into here and I'm going to centralize that so it looks a bit tidier. Now when we go up, I can see the same thing has happened to New York. Somebody thought they were being helpful or someone was trying to be clever. Either way, it ends up not being very helpful for us. So that has now got all of the merging and the centering off. So that's fabulous. Next, we're going to have a look at the fact our borders are incomplete. So does that make a difference to the functionality, doing pivot tables, sorting, filtering, doing lots of analysis down here, sum ifs, count ifs? Of course it doesn't. It is just a visual thing. But if I get a table like this, I feel it tells me something about the person who's put it together. Either that they were rushed, and that makes me think, I wonder if they did their double checks. I wonder if I can really trust the analysis that they've done. So I might then be more convinced to do some double checking work. It also tells me actually, are they a bit of a slapdash nature? Do they not really see the detail? Does that not really bother them? Now for me, if I'm working with someone in Excel, it's really important to me that they're in the detail. I want them to be all over it. So I don't really want someone working in my Excel documents. I wouldn't want someone who does data analysis if they're a bit slapdash. I want them to be really, really organised. And so for me, I would never send out a document that is not formatted properly. So how we do that, I've highlighted the whole range and I'm going to come over to here and I'm going to select all borders. It's filled in my data for me. And of course, if I want to segregate certain parts and make it slightly easier to read, I can do thick borders. So I might then just border this off to say, this is information, this is numbers. Now, if I've got boxes like that and I'm using my borders, I will always make my title row bordered as well. If you want to, you could put a border around your summary. You don't have to. That's personal choice. So that, I hope you agree, looks far more professional. The only other thing I want to say is we've got different colours up here. Again, this usually happens because someone's copied and pasted that from a different document and the other document used this light green and this document uses the darker green and they haven't bothered to change it. Again, to me, I think, oh, that's a shame. Maybe they're not into the detail. Maybe they're not really bothered what this looks like. Maybe they're not that interested in putting forward a really professional view. That would bother me if they worked in my team. So what we need to do is just make everything the same colour. So you could just colour this if you know what colour it is, or I'm going to use the format painter, and I'm just going to get them so that they all look right. Now, when I'm sending a document over to somebody, I never leave the filters on. And the reason I don't is it can make it hard to read the titles. So I will then go in and I will take my filters off. I will make sure everything looks as it should. I'll double check my formulas. But I think you'll agree that this is a much tidier, more professional looking end document. And I would certainly be happy to screen share this with somebody, or to send it with a client, or to use it in-house to then do more detailed data analysis. I hope you found this helpful. We have got other documents in the Fix My File series. We've got another Excel one that looks at formulas, and we've also got one for Word and PowerPoint. So please do check them out. Thank you.